Welcome to the Building Web3 podcast. Today we dive into the future of social media with the CEO of MeWe. Discover how MeWe built a user base of over 20 million users and is pioneering privacy and user controls by bridging Web2 and Web3. Learn about their innovative features and tokenization plans, plus see how they're giving power back to users. Remember, nothing stated here is financial advice. Welcome to the Building Web3 podcast. Today I'm here with Jeffrey, the chairman and CEO of MeWe. Jeffrey, before we get too deep into MeWe, could you give us a brief introduction into your background and what were you doing before you entered the Web3 social media space?
Thanks, Jack. It's a pleasure to be here. So I actually come from an interesting background. I'm a CPA by trade from KPMG back in the day. That's when my hair was gray. And basically what I've done is I've been pretty much in the entertainment, producing and creating television and film properties and floating back and forth between that and technology. I was fortunate enough to be the founding chairman of the parent company of MySpace when it started and when it sold. So this is my second foray 20 years later into social media. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about, I guess.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about, kind of bridging the gap. What is MeWe? What brought you to, building this company?
So first off, I'm not the founder. I was the professional guy that was hired to come in and take the reins from the founder and bring it to the next level. This is something I've done a number of times in the past in terms of professionalizing the organization and then growing it and then coming up with some exit to benefit shareholders. So pretty much what happened was MeWe is a privacy-based social media platform that existed for years, for probably like 8 or 9 years before I got here, in the Web 2 space. 20 million, was 18 million or so users when I got on board about 3 years plus ago. And we're pretty much competing with, the Facebooks, the Twitters, the Instagrams of the world. And doing that, being a privacy-based platform, we don't charge for advertising. We tested subscriptions and found that people actually might subscribe to social media, but it's a difficult road because they're getting things for free on other platforms. So why should they pay us? Well, if they pay us, then they don't have to see ads. But why exist in that world and compete with the Facebooks and the Twitters and the Instagrams and the Snapchats? Because they're spending tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars advertising, and who wants another social platform? So what we tried to do was we looked for a different strategy, a way to double down on the concept of privacy, double down on the concept of no ads, and trying to allow you to own and control your own data and information, which is very different, right, than the whole world of Facebooks and Twitters and sort of centralized control of that and leveraging it for ad revenues for them, where you don't make any money. So I was lucky enough to read about Frank McCourt and his company and a project that he was working on called Project Liberty. I mean, do you want me to get into some of that now, or are you telling me, Jax?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about that.
Okay. So Frank had a vision, and at the time he had a $100 million commitment to the technology for this particular thing. And what it was to create a whole new web, a new social web, and a way that people could own and control their own data and information. Well, the ethos of that concept and MeWe's concept, their ethos, or our ethos, was to keep things private and allow you to control information and also validate that either the data is real and that you're a real person. It fit directly into that concept, and blockchain does very well with that kind of thing. So Frequency was created, and Frequency is a chain. This is part of Project Liberty. That's their technology, along with a protocol called DSP. And today it sits on top of Polkadot. And so in essence, we did a deal to move a Web 2 app at scale into a Web 3 world. Very different than what's happening today, where most things are developed on Web 3 and they try to grow the audience. The concept was take an app like MeWe, make it part of Project Liberty, meet people where they are in the Web 2 world, and then start adopting Web 3 concepts and ways to create revenue and, again, give you ownership and control of data information as a user.
So let's talk about some of the difficulty in moving a Web 2 app into a Web 3 ecosystem, because I'm sure that was not necessarily easy. It's not as simple as just migrating some AWS server.
No, it's it. And it's actually the whole Web3 world, as you know, is very difficult. And if I started in a Web3 world, I'd probably give you a different answer to some of these questions. But since I come from a Web2 world, I look at it differently. And it is Web3, in my view, especially 3.5 years ago or 5 years ago when this project was conceived, it's a place where you got a wallet, you hold a token of Bitcoin or whatever it is, and you're sitting there waiting for it to go up. And that's the world. You don't know what it's backed by, currencies, gold, etc., but you're sitting there waiting for this thing to go up. And that's challenging because in the world that I grew up in and the world that I live in is a world where you have real apps and real things to do, and therefore revenue gets created because of that. So one challenge is, as you move from Web 2 to Web 3, is how do you make money in this world? How does the technology between Web 2 and Web 3 get integrated and work? How do you convince people that are not Web 3 savvy, that are sitting on your Web 2 platform, what benefits there are to what we're trying to do and accomplish? So those are some of the challenges that we encountered. And the fact that the tech moves so slowly. So a decision you make one day is completely different than a decision you might make in 3 or 4 months. For instance, Project Liberty, the technology originally was written on Ethereum. So when I first got involved, I thought, we're going to be on Ethereum. Well, Gavin Wood leaves, creates Polkadot. All of a sudden, we're on Polkadot. So you never know what the latest and greatest is going to be. And it's all decentralized in our world. That's what we want to be, fully decentralized. But as you know, chains don't talk to each other really. And every time there's a bridge between one chain and the other, that's an area where things go awry. So that's another huge challenge. It's picking the right platform and then hoping that that will evolve into interoperability so that the chain you're on will be able to speak to other chains as we move into the future.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about MeWe. So we've talked a lot about privacy and kind of the differentiation between Web 2 platforms. Talk about some of the features. If people haven't personally used MeWe, like what is it like? What would you call an equivalent platform to? Would there be like photo sharing? Would it be videos? For someone that's never used it, talk about some of the key features.
So look, most features on social platforms are very similar. But you want ease of use as well, and you don't want to be interrupted by ads. Or at least if you have ads, you better make sure they're relevant to you. We're privacy-based, like I said earlier. So first off is your feed and everything about what you're doing on our platform is all you. You can have a page as a business and broadcast yourself as a business, or you can be an individual on MeWe. But the key to MeWe is the groups. We have over 20.5 million users on platform, and we have over 720,000 groups. We get about 2,000 or so people just organically sign up every day, and we have around 200 new groups being formed every day. So if you could say, I want to form a new group about trips to Europe, or my latest trip to Venice, or cigars, or climbing, or comedy, etc. And so you become a champion of that group. And what we try to do is support you as a champion of your group to help grow the platform. We have some really cool, unique features. We have, the dark mode that some of these other platforms have, but we also have a two-way camera where I could be watching you as you're watching me. And that's something that's sort of unique to our platform. Otherwise, you'll see it's Facebook/Instagram-ish in terms of its look and feel. Pretty easy to migrate through and navigate rather. But the key is finding a group of people, finding your people. So you don't necessarily have to come on the platform and say, if I don't have 6 to 8 of my friends on, I'm not going to use it. Immediately you'll be moved into a group or a series of groups of interest, and you'll meet like-minded people, and stick with the platform.
Absolutely. And kind of what role do you see decentralization playing in social media? Do you see that, MeWe will kind of be continuing on the frontier of this, or do you see that like Facebook or Snapchat will kind of embrace a decentralized future, or it's just kind of against their ad revenue? Where do you see like the future of social media?
Well, you sort of touched on it there. I think it'd be very difficult to cannibalize the existing models that are for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, because they're so reliant on advertising revenue, and they're not going to want to give that up. So I don't see them fully decentralizing in any way. There's too much money involved. Maybe they have a new venture, or they do sections of it and so forth, or they create a federated type of view where it's truly not decentralized, like a Blue Sky could be considered that, and maybe some others. So we believe full decentralization is the best way to go. At the end of the day, you want to fully decentralize. Our belief is that each user should be real. The data and information that is put on platform should be validated. We believe that your social graph, that the people you like and the people who like you, should be something that are in the hands of the user. And then we also believe in tying this all into a token economy. So a full tokenization of this as well. So you're gamifying social media in a Web3 world to the benefit of folks like yourself. Like Jax, you said to me earlier, you've had 80 million views over time to the things that you've created or done. Well, why shouldn't you benefit from that? Why should the company determine that? You shouldn't. You should control and own your own data and information. It should be portable. And part of the beauty of what we're doing is as MeWe sits on top of frequency, which again is part of our McCourt partnership. That's the layer one or layer zero, whatever you want to call it. There will be other apps that sit next to us. And I think you might have heard that Project Liberty, we're making a people's bid to buy TikTok. I don't know if you heard that.
I
So
didn't.
we're for the view. Yes. So we are a lead potential buyer of TikTok, which is big news.
That is very exciting. And let's talk a little bit about, this idea of people. If I look at social media, I look at Instagram kind of started with the photographers, maybe the models. Facebook started with college students. What would you say is the predominant, I'll call it demographic of people using MeWe? Like who finds their way to MeWe at current?
That's interesting. And I noticed you didn't say what MySpace did, even though I was involved there. You know, MySpace was founded obviously around music and your art and creative side. MeWe, I would say originally, it's a pretty well distributed platform, but for a while it was political in some sense. There was a good third of the platform that was political. So different elections would occur over time. Those folks would gravitate to the platform. In the last 3.5 years, we've done a really good job of making everything even. So it's more distributed now, where the political side of things is 15 to 18% of the platform, and then you're looking at 82 to 85% of the platform is all about interest groups, and that's the key right now. So it's interesting. We're in 200 countries and territories. We're in 20 languages, translated into 20 languages. We used to be more US based. Now we're more European or Far Eastern based as the new people come on board. We're probably 60%, 70% of the folks signing up are more from Asia and Europe now than they are in the US. We are more men than women, but not significantly more. And like I said, most everyone that comes on board, about 1 to 2% of people coming on board will elect a subscription, so they get cool new features. But most people can play on MeWe and enjoy friends and enjoy these new groups or set up a group for free.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some of the challenges you guys face, because we talked earlier about moving from a Web 2 app to a Web 3 app. I'm sure there are many challenges associated with growing a social media. So what were some of the challenges, and how'd you guys work to overcome them?
Well, we're in the middle of a lot of those challenges. They continue. One thing that is extremely difficult, because the whole Web3 world is new. It's newer. I know it's been around for years and years, but it's still newer compared to the rest of the economy, if you will, the finance economy. So what happens is, to get involved, let's just say wallets. A wallet is a key thing to have if you're going to work in this Web3 world, because you have to download a wallet and you have to claim a token in some instances, or in most instances, to work in this environment. Well, where do you go to get your wallet? Do you develop it yourself, or do you rely on all these different startups to do it? And then if you have a wallet, let's just say that wallet has been much more geared to DeFi, trading, Bitcoin, Solana, AVAX, whatever it is. Well, when you're bringing people from a Web 2 world over to a Web 3 world, they don't want to download a 50-digit key. They don't want to click this button, that button, and give this information. It's very uncomfortable for them, and they can't even navigate it. They fall out. So finding the right wallet solution, or a solution to be able to house tokens and be able to have a token economy, is very challenging. That's something we're still working on. And that is going to be done that's being done at the frequency blockchain level, which is our utility token, or I should say is the token that runs the platform, the ecosystem. And then we're also working on a MeWe coin as well, which will be the fin token, if you will, that'll be used on platform. So I'd say that's a huge challenge, is getting Web2ers to understand a Web3 world, getting a wallet and the whole tokenization process going. And the fact that even though technology changes so quickly in the Web3 world, it just takes so much time to get things done. And that's another challenge to it.
Yeah, I'd say one of the main difficulties is I've worked on software for over like 10 years, and you're constantly shipping bugs in software. But in Web3, the stakes are so much higher because there's a financial, you get hacked and lose a significant portion of tokens. So I would always say that that's one of the trickier things. Plus that UX issue that you talked about, where wallets people understand them, but they're very different than how they're accustomed to.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some of the kind of community involvement and feedback you've gotten from the community. Were people clamoring for like, hey, we want this to be a Web3 app? Or was this something you guys were like, hey, we kind of decided that we're going to be privacy first. We're going to continue to push towards this decentralized future. Kind of how did that come about?
I think it's a combination of, people didn't necessarily clamor on platform to go to Web3. A lot of them, like I said, come from the Web2 world, didn't even know about Web3. Yeah, for every 10 people I talk to, maybe one even slightly understands it. So I wouldn't say it's come from an internal thing. It's come from the fact that, and I started to touch on this earlier, trying to create value for the investors and the shareholders in MeWe, that's critical. So one aspect of this is by moving into a Web3 world and taking 20 million users and beginning to migrate those users and social graph and universal handles and then tokenizing all that. That is one reason I felt that it could add more value, being a big fish in a small pond versus being a small fish in a large pond getting buried. So we have to differentiate ourselves. You mentioned that earlier. How do we differentiate? So having a large social network in a Web3 world fully decentralized is the goal. That is a big aspect of differentiation. So I'd say that's one reason. Second is, Frank and I, and obviously he had this thought long before me with Project Liberty. It's the mental health of our teens, the amount of time people spend on social, the way Stanford grads and Harvard grads are trained to be able to manipulate and control your mind, and literally TikTok, the way what happens there, which is one of the reasons why we like to bring that into our hands, if you will, part of Project Liberty. It's just not right what's happening. We're dividing our country. We're dividing focus in our kids. And it's a long-term plan to get into the brains of people. I know I sound probably like a conspiracy theorist, but if you have kids or your cousin, sister, family, whatever it is, how much time someone walks down the street and they're just stuck there, getting telephone neck. It's crazy. So there was a large aspect of this is, at this point in my life and my career, I'd like to join hands with a guy like Frank McCourt and just deliver something that could change society. So I'd say those are two reasons. Shareholder value, I think, society and being a part of the future. And then another aspect of it is we did start a community on MeWe at the beginning. And we have a couple thousand people that are just in the group that are interested in Web3 and so forth. And we're seeing that growing over time. So there's an educational process that goes on as well. And I think a lot of people don't know the benefit of Web3. It's nothing today. Having validation that you're real and you're not a bot, that's important. Having control and ownership of your social graph, that'll be meaningful when there's other things to do with your social graph, and there'll be other apps you could take it to. And then having the ability to tokenize all this, like I said, gamification, tokenization, if you will, on social platform, that'll be pretty cool. And then at some point in time, having it interoperable to other chains, and then the ability to have a currency on one chain or one type of token flip for another or convert it to fiat currencies and so forth. So as we move into the future.
Absolutely. And you've been in the social media sphere a really long time. You talked about, being very important in the MySpace era. What you've seen probably a lot of changes in social media as it stands. How bullish are you that we can kind of like turn the tide? I had this tweet the other day that like TikTok brain is an epidemic, that people we're kind of constantly rushing towards like more dopamine, like more exciting, more like titillating action. Is how difficult will it be to kind of introduce MeWe and kind of take away from some of those like titillating aspects, or those kinds of I don't know if you fully understand what I'm trying to say, but like it seems like we might be pretty far gone on the social media spectrum.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we're pretty far gone on the social spectrum. And I think, in societies, if you've been around long enough, and I haven't been around hundreds of years, but I've been around some decades, you can see things always are swinging. Clothing, culture, music, everything swings. Hairstyle, long hair, short hair, colored hair, tattoos, piercings, etc. Everything swings in culture over time. So I don't, my goal is, look, I'd love to be able to say that there's going to be a billion people on MeWe or on the new ecosystem we're a part of. And I'd love to see that that gets sucked away from the Facebooks and the Instagrams, and especially TikTok, which controls more eyeballs than all the entertainment companies together and all the social platforms together. It's scary how much. I'd love to say that, but I don't know if that's going to happen in the short term for sure. People, if all your friends are on Facebook, even though it might not be in vogue, you're still there. If you're just checking Instagram, if your kid's looking at TikTok all the time, I don't think that. But if we can bring TikTok into US TikTok into the hands of what we're trying to do, that would be a giant step. 170 million people, monthly users on that we could move into this world. So I'm just thinking about Project Liberty. Like I said, it's a three-pronged project. It's a technology, a movement, and a governance. And at this point in time, we have Stanford University, Harvard, Science Po, the University of Zurich, Georgetown University, and others that are, from an academic standpoint, all working on this problem with us, which is really cool. We're involved with the United States government to try to make like the TikTok deal happen and other things, which is very interesting. And it's really about getting with you, your podcast, folks like that, to explain and to have something go viral in this whole movement, because it's really a movement. I've talked to a number of influencers because I come from the producing world and the entertainment world. I have a TV series that's out right now on Tubi, starring Woody Harrelson, Tiffany Haddish. It's called Freak Brothers. And if we can get people from the entertainment world, from the influencer world, like yourself, that want to be a part of what we're doing. And some people want to be a part of it just to make change in the world. So I think, like I said earlier, tying this back, culture swings, culture changes. I think there's a backlash now as people are growing up that they're going, yeah, I don't want to use my phone as much. I don't want to be served all these ads. I want more control. I'm tired of not being able to make money off of my business that I've built. All of you, what we're trying to do on MeWe, we're going to NFTize groups. So if Jax has his own group and you have a million people in your group or 50,000 people in your group, why not create a value for that so that it's transferable, that you can, it's like building your own corporation within MeWe. So I'm bullish that we'll get eyeballs. I'm bullish that we'll get attention. And if Frank McCourt and the whole McCourt family's investment now and commitment is like $500 million, plus the TikTok situation, we've gotten a lot more visibility. When I show up at Mainnet or Consensus or one of these conferences and people start talking about, well, Farcaster or Lens protocol or whatever, they don't realize it, but we have almost 1 million people right now on chain, and we have almost 500,000 people that have claimed their own social graph. We're far bigger than Lens. We're far bigger than Farcaster, but people don't even know us. So I think the movement could pick up through word of mouth and through people like yourself that support it.
Yeah, let's talk about Farcaster and Lens because that was on my list of questions to get to. Is how do you guys see those platforms, and where would you say the differentiation is? So Farcaster, as I know it, is a platform for building other social medias. Warpcaster probably being the most popular. Lens, I'm not sure if you would be able to define that for the audience. This is more deep social fi that we're talking about now.
Yeah. I'm not going to go into detail on talking about the competitors, but I would say, we're similar in a way to Warpcast is the overall, Warpcaster is the overall platform, and Farcaster is, and Warpcaster is the social component of it. And they're set up today where you could build on those platforms and they get fees and so forth. We're not set up that way today. Again, remember, we're moving from a Web 2 to Web 3 world, but we want to create and have those tools as well so these things can happen. We do look to that in the future. So we're a larger platform than both of them. We have, like I said, there's 20 million people on our platform. If we have 1 million migrated, we haven't even done mandatory migrations. So Farcaster just raised a $1 billion valuation. They just raised $150 million. That's a positive for us. And like Farcaster sits on top of a layer one, we sit on top of a layer one. So we're similar in that aspect. I do have a ticker up all the time and saying, well, how many does Lens have up? How many does Farcaster have up? And like I said, we're 3 times the size already on chain as Lens, maybe 4, and we're twice the size of Farcaster today. And as we migrate, millions more will far exceed that. Remember, we're going to be growing from taking Web 2 folks that are already on our platform and just migrating them to Web 3, where all these other places are taking Web 3 knowledgeable people and trying to grow them. So our pool, if you will, that we would draw upon is most of the world where they're just drawing from a Web 3 world, which is very different. We're also extremely group-based. That's our key. It's extremely group-based. That's very different. But we don't have our tokenization program in place yet.
Yeah, the TAM is much larger for you guys. And for people that are unfamiliar with Farcaster, I would say their demographic is largely like crypto OGs, for lack of a better term, and people that are very into the development. If people want to learn more about Farcaster, then go back to the Noun Space episode or the episode with Jacek from Degen and the Degen token. But yes, it's a very interesting space. I'm sure you've been keeping an eye on the Telegram ecosystem. This is an interesting one to me because they're essentially a messaging app that is somewhat evolving into a social media. I don't know if you have any, interest in what's going on over there, or you're like, they're so different than us.
Well, I've talked to folks at Signal. I've talked to some folks over at Telegram, and I think, what's interesting, and this is the way I've seen over time is, at first it's a land grab, right? You start as something, a messaging app. You start as YouTube with just a whole bunch of content that people throw up there. Or you start as Amazon shipping stuff or whatever. And all of a sudden you're in the movie business. And once you have your audience in place, you use it as a distribution network to start generating ad revenues, some sort of commercial sales or so forth. So I think Telegram is in a really interesting spot. Running a messaging app, though, is so much easier than running a full social network. If you would look at our code And I almost wish we were in the messaging business. At one time, we had MeWe, a MeWe messaging type service, and we shut it down. We couldn't keep track of everything. So I think what Telegram's doing is special. I think they're going to get a lot of traction. But when they move from just the chat, if you will, into full social media, they're going to hit a lot of other obstacles.
Yeah, that's a great observation. If you look at the WhatsApp team from back in the day before they were acquired by Facebook, and the Telegram team, they're very small. I think under sub 100 people in the entire organization, which is is crazy because I used to work at Google. Like that YouTube team, I don't even thousands. Would be my guess. So
Yeah.
very interesting. Let's talk a little bit about some of the notable like partnerships and collaborations. Yeah, obviously you guys have connections to many influencers. Where are you guys kind of moving on that?
Well, I'll widen the definition of what you say partnerships and relationships. So first off, at MeWe, we have a number of incredible supporters of MeWe, from board members to advisors, etc. We have Steve Wozniak is a big supporter. He's on our board of advisors. That's interesting. Sir Tim Berners-Lee is also a shareholder on our board of advisors, and Sir Tim created the World Wide Web. And it's through people like that Tim, when we talk about it. It's look what's happened to the web. Look how these companies have taken my web and turned it into something that I don't even recognize today. So I'm supporting MeWe and what you're doing with decentralization and moving forward in terms of ownership and control. So we have some interesting Earth, Wind, and Fire. Erdine White, one of the founders of Earth, Wind, and Fire, is an investor and big supporter. And the Danny Garcia and The Rock was an early investor in MeWe. So I have some really interesting folks that are behind it. Divya Narendra, I don't know if you know that name, but in the movie Social Network, there was the Winklevoss twins. He's partners with the Winklevoss. He was the gentleman sitting on the staircase. The movie hired Zuckerberg for Harvard Connect. Well, he's on our board of directors. I've known him 10 years. You could say he's truly the original founder of Facebook before Mark, because he hired him. And he loves what we're doing. He's a shareholder and on our board of directors. So we have a great group just internally supporting what we're trying to do. McCourt, as you know, we just mentioned McCourt Global, Frank McCourt and his whole team and the people associated. And that expands, as I mentioned earlier, also into the Harvards, the Stanfords, the Science Po's, the Georgetown universities, and some places in the United States government. There's some really excellent partnerships. Most of those partnerships are between Project Liberty and the McCourt side, but because McCourt's an investor in MeWe and because we're part of their ecosystem, we get to leverage those partnerships for ourselves as well.
Absolutely. And let's talk about some of the upcoming milestones and developments that people can look forward to. Obviously, there's great, community advisors. There's many great investors. What can people look forward to in terms of development?
Well, in terms of the development, the big thing we're doing now is we want to have other apps that can either be sitting alongside of MeWe, third-party apps, gaming, etc., or apps that we develop, so that when you have your universal login, you can have the ability to go from our app in social media to go into a gaming app, to go into a photography app, to go into something else. So that's one thing we're working on with the McCourt Frequency Group. Wallets are a key. How you're going to get frequency tokens into people's hands to be able to be staked and utilized for MeWe. And in addition to getting a MeWe coin running, that's another big development that's coming up. That's large. Hoping that we make inroads with Project Liberty, makes inroads with TikTok, because that would be huge. Just imagine a world where MeWe is sitting here, it's interoperable with logins to TikTok, and now you have, they're very complementary, but no algorithms, or I should say different kinds of algorithms, not the algorithm on TikTok that serves you, controls your brain so that you become a different type of individual X number of years from now when the other governments are taking charge of you, but more where you help determine your algorithm. You determine the kinds of feeds and things you want to see as an individual versus us creating an algorithm to feed them to you. So those are some things we're doing. Tokenization, obviously, the platform. is a new one. And then our two-way camera, we're going to do some really cool things with our two-way camera feature in a Web3 environment. Tokenizing or NFTizing groups, like I said earlier, where you can own and control your own data information and your own like mini company within MeWe. So those are just some things coming into the future.
Absolutely. And I think it's a very exciting future. I'm excited to use MeWe myself. Some final questions to close off. So one of the goals of the podcast is to get more people building on Web3, get more founders in the space. And you're kind of more of the professional CEO, as it seemed like you described earlier. What kind of advice would you give to, founders looking to start building a Web3? And at what point do you think they should consider maybe bringing in somebody to help operationalize it for them?
Well, again, the Web3 world is challenging. It's very different, and it's nascent. It's so new still. We're still in early days. I mean, Bitcoin could be 10 times the dollar amount now in the next few years. Who knows after the halving? So I would say, if you're trying to get in the Web3 space, find a niche idea, something that you think you can either do better or different or more effectively than anyone else. Research the chains. Really important what that ecosystem is for you, because that ecosystem that you're going to be a part of, or that chain, they represent certain demographics, certain way of doing things, and certain type of people. So make sure you're on the right one, EC compatible, whatever it is. And then know that at some point in time there will be interoperability. So just have that in the back of your mind. The chain you pick up first is important, but at the end of the day, they'll probably speak to each other. Look to the foundations and the support for getting money off of these Web3 foundations that exist. So you can get 50,000, 250,000 or up from these if you have a great idea. But I guess one of my recommendations is probably completely unrelated to Web3 is the people you get in business with are the ones that are going to determine your happiness and your success. So if you pick the wrong partner or the wrong developer, or you go down a path wrong people-wise, it'll just be with you forever, and it's hard to extricate yourself from that. So those would be some of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, this reminds me of my mom's advice, and she's a judge, so she's very she has a lot of wisdom. She always said, "Jax, there's nothing more expensive than an ex-wife," and the same could go for an ex-business partner and anyone. I would also recommend that people often vet the people that they get in business with. A cursor, like an easy Google search, I get surprised the more I move up in the world is how many scammers there actually are. I used to think everyone was just telling the truth, and it's quite the opposite sometimes.
It's quite the opposite. You learn so much, but you only learn it when you're in it. And it's so difficult, just a reference for someone who wants to work with us or a recruiter that you get. I'll give you some references. They give you 3 references. You're just talking to the people they want you to talk to anyway. They're going to say good things about you, but you don't know until they're working with you. So that's a non-Web3 recommendation, but I think it's critical.
Yeah, just good advice in general really spans. Yeah, there's many differences between Web 2, Web 3, oil mines and everything, but relationships and these types of things kind of span technology.
Absolutely.
So let's just talk a little bit more about where people can learn more about MeWe, get involved. I know a lot of people are going to want to download the app and get involved with everything that's going on there.
Sure. So a few different things. One is, like you said, you can go to the Apple Store, you can go to the Google Store, you can go directly to the website, and you can download MeWe. We're highly rated far better than Facebook in the App Store, by the way. And you can download the app. All new users that download the app will automatically be logged in through the Web3 world. So you can access this Web2 app that is migrating, but you're logging through a Web3 portal. You'll get validated that way. Immediately, you can claim your own social graph. So all your interactions that you build on MeWe, you're going to own and control them from the beginning. It's important to do that because soon, when we release the wallet, you will then be able to claim tokens. And as you claim tokens, you'll be able to do things with those tokens. And so it's important to come through that way. So that's one way to get involved. And like I said, we have a Web3 community within MeWe, so you can get in, join that group of the Web3 community and learn everything that's going on. But we also have a news and updates feed that are telling people. Besides that, it's read about Project Liberty. There's a white paper on it, Project Liberty. There's a whole everything written about it, everything we're doing with the TikTok situation. And Frank McCord is, like I said, the mastermind behind all that. So I would take a look at Project Liberty, and I would love to have influencers involved in what we're doing. Because I want it to be a genuine thing. You could always pay somebody to promote your app or promote your program or your cigar or your bottle of vodka. But if you really believe yourself that this is the way to go, that it's good for society, I think people will take an extra step. It's not all capitalistic. I believe in that human beings, I'd like to believe that human beings have a core to them that want to be helpful and that want to contribute to society. And I think this is like saving animals. This is bringing people back their own personal liberties, and it's affecting and impacting mental health. It's changing the way social is and putting the control and ownership, taking it out of the hands of big tech and putting it back into your hands. And I would love for people to realize that, see it, support it.
Absolutely. So on that note, everyone get involved with MeWe. I'll put all the links in the description, and to everyone building on Web3, let's get back to it. Jeffrey, thank you so much for coming on here and educating us about MeWe. We're excited to use the app.
Jax, thank you for having me on board. Appreciate your time.